71. By a false name Pilgrim defeats the fiendish wolf. In Epiphany Guanyin subdues the monster king. Form's emptiness, that's ancient truth. Emptiness, too, is so-called form. If one fully knows Chan's emptiness form, who needs cinnabar ground and burnt? Don't slack in work on virtue and act. Your labor requires bitter toil. You will face heaven when merits fulfilled, with godly features ere preserved. We tell you now about that Jupiter's rival, who ordered all the front and back doors tightly shut in order to search for Pilgrim. All the commotion lasted until dusk, but not a trace of the intruder could be found. Taking a seat in the skinning pavilion, the Fiend King assembled the rest of the fiends and gave the order that guards were to be posted at all the doors, holding handbells and shouting passwords, beating drums and rattles. Every one of them was to put the arrow to the bow and go on patrol through the night with drawn swords. However, the great sage Sun, you see, had changed into a tiny fly and alighted on a doorpost. When he saw that the front was tightly guarded, he spread his wings and flew instead into the rear palace, where he found the Lady Golden Sage slumped on a table. In clear drops the tears rolled down. In low tones she voiced her grief. Flying through the door, Pilgrim gently landed on her disheveled black tresses to listen to how she was weeping. In a little while, the lady suddenly cried out, "Oh, my lord! You and I must have burned the broken head incense in our former lives, so that we meet in this one a fiend king. Parted for 3 years, which day will we meet? Stranded at 2 places, that is our grief. The elder you sent has just conveyed the news. Our union's thwarted when he lost his life, since it's hard to untie the bells of gold. Our longings are keener than those of old." When Pilgrim heard this, he moved up to the base of her ear and whispered, "Lady Sage Pallas, I'm Elderson, the divine monk sent here by your country, and I haven't lost my life. What happened had to do with my impetuousness. When you were drinking with the Fiend King, I approached the dresser and stole the golden bells. I managed to slip out to the pavilion in front, but I couldn't resist untying the wrap to take a look. Little did I realize that when I pulled out the cotton stuffed in the bells, smoke, fire, and yellow sand would pour out all at once with a clang. I was so flustered that I dropped the bells and changed back into my original form. I wielded my iron rod to wage a bitter battle, but when I couldn't break free, I feared that I might be harmed. That was why I changed into a tiny fly to fly up to a doorpost and hide until now. Now the Fiend King is guarding the place more tightly than ever and refuses to open the doors. You must, therefore, trick him, in the name of conjugal duties, into coming in here to rest. Then I'll be able to escape and make another plan to rescue you." The moment the lady heard these words, she shook all over, as if gods were pulling her hair. Weak and fearful, she felt her heart thump and pound. "Are you?" she asked tearfully. "A ghost or a human being?" "I'm neither a human," replied Pilgrim, "nor am I a ghost. At the moment, I have changed into a tiny fly here. Don't be afraid. Go quickly and invite the Fiend King to come." The lady refused to believe him. Shedding tears, she said softly, "You're not trying to bewitch me." "Why would I want to bewitch you?" said Pilgrim. "If you don't believe me, spread open your palm and I'll land on it for you to see." The lady indeed stretched forth her left palm, and Pilgrim gently alighted on her lovely hand. How he seemed like a black pea nailed to the lotus bud, a bee resting on peony flower, a grape having landed on silk brocade, a thick black dot by the lily branch. Holding high her jade-like hand, the Golden Sage Pallas uttered the cry, "Divine monk! I'm the transformation of the divine monk," answered Pilgrim with a buzz. Only then did the lady believe him. "When I managed to get that Fiend King here," she whispered to him. "How will you proceed?" Pilgrim said, as one ancient person put the matter, "To ruin one's whole life there's only wine. And he also said, "To break up all cares, there's nothing like wine. There are many uses for wine, and so the best thing you can do is still to make him drink. Summon now one of the maids closest to you and point her out to me. I'll change into her appearance and serve you by your side. When there's a chance, I'll act." The lady indeed agreed, and she called out, "Spring Grace, where are you?" From behind a screen stepped forth a white-faced vixen, who knelt down and said, "Madam, what is your pleasure? Tell the rest of the maids." Replied the lady, "To light up gauze lanterns, burn the musk gland, and accompany me to the front court to ask the king to retire." Spring Grace at once went out to summon 7 or 8 dear fiends and vixen spirits, who came in with a pair of lanterns and a pair of portable urns. They stood on both sides of the lady, who arose with hands folded while the great sage soared into the air. Dear pilgrim. Spreading his wings, he headed straight for the head of the white-faced vixen. There he pulled off one piece of hair and blew a mouthful of immortal breath on it, crying, "Change." It changed at once into a sleep-inducing insect, which he gently placed on her face. The moment that this insect reaches a person's face, you see, it will crawl toward one's nostril, and when it gets inside, the person will fall asleep. Our Spring Grace, therefore, gradually felt so fatigued that she could hardly remain on her feet. Rocking from side to side and nodding her head, she ran back to her previous resting place, laid down her head, and snored away. Pilgrim flew down and with one shake of his body changed into the form of Spring Grace. He walked out from behind the screen to stand at attention with the rest of the maids, and we shall leave them there for the moment. We tell you now about that Lady Golden Sage Palace, who was walking out to the front. When the little fiends saw her, they immediately reported to Jupiter's rival. "Great King, Madam has arrived." The fiend hurried out of the skinning pavilion to meet her. "Great King," said the lady, "the smoke and the fire have subsided, and the thief, too, has vanished. The night is deep, and I have come especially to ask you to retire." Highly pleased, the fiend said, "Madam, please take care of yourself. Just now that thief was actually Sun Wukong, who, having overcome my vanguard and slain my trust junior officer, came in here by means of transformation in order to deceive us. We have conducted a most careful search, but there's not a trace of him. This is why I feel quite uneasy about the matter. That fellow must have escaped," said the lady. "You should not worry any more, Great King. Let's retire and rest." When the monster spirit saw the lady standing there with this earnest invitation, he dared not refuse. After he had given the order to the rest of the fiends to be careful with the torches and candles and to look out for thieves and robbers, he went back to the rear palace with the lady. Pilgrim, who had changed into the form of Spring Grace, was led inside also along with the 2 rows of maids. "Prepare us some wine," cried the lady, "so that we may relieve the great king of his weariness." "Exactly. Exactly," said the fiend king, laughing. "Bring us wine quickly. I will help the dear lady to calm her fears." The specious Spring Grace and other fiends thereupon brought out some bowls of fruit and several dishes of game as they set up tables and chairs. The lady picked up a goblet, and the fiend king also presented her with a goblet. After the 2 of them had exchanged their cups, the specious Spring Grace picked up the wine pot on the side and said, "Since the great king and madam did not exchange their cups until this very night, you should drain the cups so that I can pour you a double happiness round." They did so. Again their cups were filled, and they drank that too. The specious Spring Grace spoke up once more. "This is such a happy meeting between the great king and madam. Let those maids who can sing sing, and those who can dance dance." Hardly had he finished speaking when the entire hall was filled with the sound of songs and harmonious melodies. Those who could dance did dance, and those who could sing did sing, as the 2 of them drank a good deal more wine. Then the lady stopped the song and dance, and all the maids were again divided into 2 choirs to leave and stand beyond the screen. Only the specious Spring Grace stayed behind to pour the wine back and forth. The lady did nothing but engage in conjugal talk with the fiend king. Look at her. She displayed such sultry looks and amorous charms that the fiend king went limp with desire. But he simply had no luck in touching her. What a pity. Truly, he felt like a cat biting on a urine bubble, all empty delight. After they flirted for a while and laughed for a while, the lady asked, "Great king, were the treasures damaged?" "These treasures," replied the fiend king, "had been forged by the elemental powers of nature. How could they be damaged?" When the thief pulled out the cotton, however, the leopard skin wrap was burned. "How did you pack them up again?" asked the lady. The fiend king said, "No need to do that, for I've tied them again to my waist." On hearing this, the specious Spring Grace pulled off a handful of hair, which he chewed to pieces. He quietly approached the fiend king and placed these pieces of hair on his body. Blowing 3 mouthfuls of immortal breath on them, he whispered, "Change." And at once they became 3 kinds of vicious thing, lice, fleas, and bedbugs. They penetrated the fiend king's garments and began to bite him madly. Ridden by unbearable itch, that fiend king put his hands inside his bosom to rub and scratch himself. When his fingers caught hold of several of the lice, he took them up to the lamps to have a closer look. When she saw the insects, the lady said wistfully,